Next thing is that the emperor himself has no direct ability to influence policy. He is a constitutional monarch. He presides over this group of ministers, but he does not direct them. He can obliquely affect matters by asking questions that may give these ministers clues as to what the emperor is thinking about, but he's not allowed to come out and just say, I want this or I want that. It's, again, very indirect how things have to happen here. So, as you can see, it's a fairly interesting political environment these people are having to operate in. If you lay these guys out on a spectrum of where they fall in terms of we're going to surrender to we're not going to surrender, what you see is we got three hardliners led by Anami, who are of the opinion that Japan should never surrender. In fact, Anami has made public pronouncements that it would be preferable for every man, woman, and child in Japan to die before we give up to the Allies. That's how hardcore he is. A little bit to the left, you have Suzuki, the Emperor, and Kido, who are of the opinion that, okay, we probably lost the war, but what we need to do is come up with one last major victory over the Americans, which will improve our bargaining position so that if we go into a negotiation with the Americans, we're going to get something of a better deal than what we're being offered right now, which is unconditional surrender. That's what's on the table, right? And then the peace camp is represented by Yonai and Togo. Togo is the only individual here who thinks that they should start negotiating with the Americans right now. But you can see that at this point in time, in the middle of July, the peace camp has got a pretty weak hand to be playing. The Big Six are banking on two things. The first is what's known as Operation Ketsugo. They understand that the Americans are going to be invading Japan, most likely, and that the most likely place where that's going to happen is going to be in the southern island of Kyushu. And so, as a result of that, they have been furiously pumping troops into Kyushu for the last 7 months. By the time we get to the middle of July, they have put nearly 1 million soldiers in Kyushu, over 10,000 aircraft, and are awaiting the American invasion. And the Army is confident that they are going to be able to kick us back into the water. The second thing, though, they're hedging their bets, and they're hoping to use Moscow and use the Soviets as an intermediary to potentially negotiate a peace. And so to that end, what they want to do is they want to send this gentleman out to Moscow as a special envoy, Prince Konoe Fumimaro. Konoe is a big shot. Konoe has been a prime minister 3 separate times, actually. He comes from a house that is damn near as noble as the emperor's house, okay? So he's a big force in Japan. So they want to send him out to Moscow. And this creates problems for Japan's ambassador in Moscow, a guy named Sato. Sato, likewise, is a very senior, experienced hand. He, too, has been a foreign minister in previous administrations. And when he starts getting communiques from his boss, Togo, that I want you to, make it happen that we can send Konoe out to Moscow, Sato goes back to them and is like, okay, guys, I can't very well just walk into Molotov's office and say, hey, I want to send Konoe out here. Are you cool with having him come visit? Molotov is going to want to have a term sheet from us. Where is our initial bargaining position to actually end this war? And the problem for Togo, of course, is that he can't give him one, because the Big Six can't even come to internal agreement at this point as to any conditions that they would be willing to terminate the war. So every time that Sato goes back to Togo and says, what's our term sheet, Togo kind of hand waves around this. And finally, what ends up happening is that on 18 July, Sato sends a cable back to Tokyo, and he says, in pretty blunt terms, you guys are being completely unrealistic. The very best deal we are going to get to end this war is going to be unconditional surrender, possibly modified by the retention of the imperial system, okay? That's what we're going to get out of this thing. And a few days later, Togo cables him back and says, with regard to unconditional surrender, we are unable to consent to it under any circumstances whatsoever. I point this out for 3 reasons. First is, the Americans are reading all of this. We have broken Japan's diplomatic codes years ago, And by this point in the war, we have thousands of analysts who are working this intel channel. And in some cases, we are reading these messages more quickly than Sato and Togo are, okay? So there's been a persistent myth down through the years that, oh, we really didn't need to drop the bomb on the Japanese because the Japanese were just about ready to throw in the towel, and if we had just offered them that they could keep the emperor, they would have thrown in the towel. But this series of, transmissions back and forth is contemporaneous evidence that that is just not the case. They were nowhere near wanting to throw in the towel. Because you'll notice that Sato is predicting precisely the terms that the Japanese will end up accepting a month from now, and yet those are totally unacceptable to Togo at this point in time.